All right. So, welcome to our class summary video in case you missed the Zoom for September 24th on Thursday. So, on here, we're going to go over what you need to do to make up what you missed on Zoom. So, before we officially begin, one reminder that you have a quiz on Friday, lesson 2.1 to 2.8. The study guide will be on Wednesday's folder. So at this point, go ahead and go to Schoology for medical chemistry, either period 1 or period 5, whatever period you're in. Right. So when you get onto your period of Schoology, it should look like this. Period 1 is purple, period 5 is red. Right. To find your study guide, go ahead and click on week 6 folder. And if you click the tiny arrow on the left-hand side where it says Lesson 2.1-2.8 Quiz Study Guide, this is your study guide for your quiz coming up on Friday. Go ahead and click on that. And it should open up on Schoology within Schoology in this view. If it does not, though, like you see an unhappy face and it's all gray in the background, go ahead and click on the title or the square with an arrow pointing to the upper right-hand corner, right? Because if you click on the title, usually it tends to work then. So this is your quiz study guide. I've linked all the lessons we've gone over here as well to help you out. And your study guide, common terms that you need to know in this first section. And in the proficient section are questions you'll probably see on your quiz on Friday. Now, going back to Schoology, so go ahead and go back onto your Schoology site and click back where it says Materials. And to find the answer key, you're going to go onto today's folder. So week 6, today is Thursday, Zoom class. Oh, sorry, not Zoom class links. Lesson 2.1-2.8 study guide answer key. So if you click on this, it will look almost exactly the same as the study guide, except for the background is green. So that's how you tell them apart, right? So lesson 2.1-2.8 study guide answer key, if you go ahead and click on either the title or clicking on this square with an arrow, boop, it should pop up on a separate site, right? So this is your answer key. Everything is written in red. It looks almost exactly the same, except it has a green background. And this version is your study guide. This is optional, but I highly recommend you look over it, try some problems, make sure you can do them, and make sure they're correct, because your quiz questions will look very similar to these. Okay? All right. So because today is a Thursday, Thursdays and Tuesdays are review days. You mainly just need to do your launch review and score a 5 out of 6 or higher. And in this launch review, we're reviewing what we did yesterday, the Bohr model. When I looked at your exit ticket yesterday, I noticed that some of you got some of the questions incorrect. They were very minor errors, but important errors to talk about. So at this point, go ahead and go back to your Schoology page again and click on September 24, Thursday class materials. And then click on where it says September 24 Zoom dash class links. And then complete the link launched check-in. So that's the second link in the September 24 Zoom dash class links. So go ahead and open this up, complete this first, And when you're done completing it, go ahead and unpause the video because I'm going to go over the answers to these before you take the actual launch that I'm going to count for real. Okay. Hopefully you have completed your launch check-in and you know what you got right and what you got wrong. If you got everything correct, you can go ahead and complete the link to the actual launch and you will probably be okay. If you got any of them wrong, especially the last few questions, stick with me or fast forward to the questions that you got wrong and we'll go over those. So I'm going to go over these questions in order, but feel free to skip to the part of the video where I go over the questions that you got wrong only. Okay, so for question number 1, it says for this element that Ms. Kwan made up, how many protons does this element have? Right, so the top number is the number that tells you the number of protons. Right, so therefore, for question number 1, you have 17 protons. That is the correct answer. I highly recommend that you add to your lesson 3.4 notes and draw out this Q symbol, box it, write 17 on top, the symbol Q, 67.01, and circle and label the top number as protons because you're going to need this in your launch later and for your notes in general. We're going to use this over and over and over again. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to question number 2. Right. Feel free to pause the video if you need to take these notes right now. Okay. Question number 2 asks, for this element that Ms. Kwan made up, how many neutrons does this element have? Right, so this time it's asking for neutrons. Now, this time it's a little bit more complicated. There are a couple of extra things we need to know. So here, this is what we call our atomic mass. Atomic mass. And the atomic mass, or the weight of our atom, is made up of 2 numbers added up together. One of those numbers is our top number, our protons, that we mentioned earlier for question 1. And the other number is the number of neutrons. So here, our atomic mass is 67.01. When I see a decimal points, I'm always going to round to the nearest whole number. Nearest whole number. So after this, in front of this decimal is number 7. So that's the number I'm going to round to. I'm going to look behind this number and I'm going to follow the rule for rounding, right? And if you don't recall from math class, there is a rhyme to help you remember a rule for rounding. And that is if the number is 4 or less, you're going to let it rest, meaning you don't change the number, right? If the number that I circled is 5 or more, you're going to add 1 more, right? So if the number after the decimal, this 0 that you circled, is the number 5 or more, you're going to add 1 to this number 7. But since this number is 0, it is 4 or less. So it is less than 4. So I'm going to let it rest, meaning that this number is just going to be 67. Right? Okay. So here, I know that my atomic mass is made up of two numbers, protons plus neutrons. And in the last question, I mentioned that protons was 17 because it's our top number, right? So I also know part of this is 17 protons. And I know that 17 plus however many neutrons I have will make up my atomic mass. So I need to think to myself, what plus 17 equals 67, right? So this might seem kind of tricky for some of you, and that's okay, because this is essentially a general algebra problem, right? So if I know everything adds up to 67, and I have 17 of these things, I want to figure out how much of the neutrons do I have. Well, another way I can think of it is 67 minus my 17 protons will give me a certain number of neutrons, right? And if I do 67 minus 17, that will give me 50, right? So therefore, I know I have 50 neutrons. So how many neutrons do I have here? Well, I should have 50 neutrons, right? Mainly from using this equation to figure out my neutrons. So in your notes, I would add this, circling the bottom number, that the bottom number represents atomic mass, and that equals two things, protons plus neutrons. And to solve for the atomic mass, you would need to subtract my atomic mass number minus the number of protons. If you struggled with the rounding parts, I would also write down the rule for rounding as well. Right. So at this point, go ahead and pause this video and write down what you need. And then unpause and we'll go over question number 3. Okay, so going over question number 3. How many electrons does this element have, right? So earlier we said that this top number is the number of protons. Something else you should know is that this number is also the number for electrons. I want to make a note to remind you that this top number is the electrons only if it is a neutral atom. Right, so neutral atom. So far, we've only talked about neutral atoms, and that basically means I have the same number of negative things, or electrons, as I do protons, which are the positive charges in our atom. Okay? Okay. So here, since electrons and protons are the same, we're still looking at just the top number. How many electrons do I have? Well, I have 17 electrons as well, same as protons. So just like before for question 1 and 2, right, I would label this top number electrons and write this side note to remind yourself that this is only true if it is a neutral atom, and currently we are only working on neutral atoms. Right. And once you're done writing this down, go ahead and click unpause. And I'll go over question number 4, which is the main question that most people are getting wrong. Okay, let's go over question number 4. So question number 4 asks, for this element that Ms. Kwan made up, how many electrons will be in the outermost ring? So this time I'm also looking for electrons, but in the outermost ring. And it says, hints, draw the Bohr model on a scratch sheet of paper first. So I'm going to draw it on the screen, right? And before I do, there are a couple things I need to remember. One of the things I need to remember from lesson 3.4 Nearpod is that this number is the number of electrons, as mentioned earlier in the video. And I also need to remember that each ring or energy level or shell in an atom can only fit a certain number of electrons. So the first ring only fits 2 electrons. Our second ring, I'm going to put quotation marks instead of rewriting the word ring, right? But it means the same thing. So second ring, I can fit 8 electrons. The third ring or energy level or shell, I can fit 18 electrons, right? So if I need to draw 17 electrons, I need to figure out, okay, how do I know how many will be on the outermost ring? So let's start with drawing the first set of electrons, right? A reminder that I need to draw 7 electrons, which I'm going to write as E minus total, right? Just to start. Okay, now remember, our first ring fits 2 electrons only. So in this first ring, I'm going to draw 1, 2 electrons, right? So I need to draw 17 total. I just drew 2 electrons, meaning I need to draw 15 more, right? Because 17 minus 2 is 15 electrons. But before I draw them, I need to create another ring because the first one only fits 2. My second one fits 8. So since I need to draw 15 total now, after drawing these 2, let's draw the 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I drew 8 electrons in the second ring. So out of my total that I didn't draw yet, so 15 minus 8, I have 7 more electrons to draw. So in my last ring, notice that the last ring or the third ring fits 18. So I'm going to draw 7. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my last ring has 7. I drew 7 because I need to draw 7 more electrons. After I draw the 7 electrons, after I drew the 7 electrons, right, I have drawn all 17 electrons. So I'm at 0. I drew all 17 already. Right, now I can answer the question, how many electrons will be in the outermost ring? Right, so this is my outermost ring in magenta, and I drew 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 electrons. So how many electrons will I have in the outermost ring? 7. Okay, So for this series of notes, I would definitely add this part, that each ring can only fit a certain number of electrons. And to remind yourself, I would highly recommend color coding this so that you can know what you did in order to get the answer, or the number 7. All right. So at this point, feel free to pause this video to write down the important information, and then you can unpause when you're ready. I'm going to go ahead and erase this and go over what to do next. All right, so now let's go ahead and go back to your Schoology page and go ahead and click on the link to actual launch. So this is what I'm going to check in order to calculate your homework grade, right? Please read the questions very carefully. They're very similar to your launch check-in questions, the ones that look like this, right? If you're still stuck or unsure, or you did really poorly on this launch, always feel free to email me or direct message me on Instagram, right? Know that my office hours are on Tuesday, so you can reach me in any one of these locations. So you can email me, direct message me, or you can go to office hours on Tuesday from 2 to 3 p.m. Okay? Have a great day, y'all.